The Jazz are active, very active in the trade market. We continue to burn up the phone lines and talk to MFers who know more about this than we do. And our NBA sources told us yesterday that the Jazz have indeed been in contact with the Boston Celtics, and they have had conversations about Marcus Smart becoming a Utah Jazz man. And it seems like this particular scenario has a lot of legs. From what we understand in Boston, um, he is one of the names that they are actively trying to move. And the Jazz have a need for a defensive wing player. We've talked about that. Marcus Smart certainly is known for his tenacious and tough defense.
Facts.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. He fits a big bill in that he's a guy that is one tough SOB. That's a guy that you don't want to see guarding you. Is he a wing player? Not really. He's a guard. But certainly guard defense, perimeter defense of any kind has been a significant issue for this Utah Jazz team. I've heard all kinds of wild speculation about what was going to Boston in return. I do know, according to what I've been told by people in the NBA, is that the Jazz are looking to acquire a second-round draft pick from Boston as part of this deal. And what that tells you is there will be multiple pieces going to Boston if a Marcus Smart trade is executed. My guess is in Boston has draft capital to include. It would be something in the order of a Marcus Smart and a second-round pick. I would not be surprised if there was a second contract coming back from Boston in this deal, because Boston is looking to gain flexibility. And when you have guys like, another guy that comes to mind is Dennis Schroeder, another guy that comes to mind is Richardson. Like, when you have those kind of situations in Boston on their roster that they are actively trying to rectify or change, the Utah Jazz are in a situation where they're not dictating to anybody. And they're certainly not dictating to the Boston Celtics for a chip like Marcus Smart, who I'm told is in demand in 3-4 different cities around the NBA. So my feeling is the Jazz they absolutely love to get in on a Marcus Smart deal. It's going to be a matter of what they can get back. It is not surprising at all that Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz are looking for draft capital, because they essentially have none. They don't even have a second-round pick until, I believe it's 2028. They need to acquire draft capital in some form or fashion. Second-round picks are not usually where you find superstars, but they are trade chips, and it does allow you to more quickly increase the value of a player when you can attach a second-round pick. So it'll be interesting to see if that trade happens or how that happens, but we feel very good that the Boston Celtics and the Utah Jazz have had Marcus Smart conversations. My guess is players going to Boston, from what I've heard, what seems like the most logical fit is most likely Bojan Bogdanovic, because Boston is very thirsty for three-point shooting. They need it. They don't have it, and the Jazz have plenty of it.
Bojan.
I am told at this point, though, that the Utah Jazz have been a little hesitant to trade Jordan Clarkson or include him in deals. They are readily including Joe Ingles in his expiring deal in just about any conversation. Does that get a Marcus Smart trade done? Probably, but it's probably not going to bring you a second-round pick to go with it. So it's all a matter of what Boston's getting in return, because let's be honest, I don't think anybody thinks Boston's competing for the Eastern Conference this year.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, I think that's completely fair to say, but I think, Boston is in a place where they need to figure out how to build this team around, Jalen and Jason. They have to figure out the formula, and they haven't figured that out yet. You've made obviously a coaching change and moved him up to the front office, and there's been a lot of change on the coaching staff, but it seems like they just haven't been able to figure out this roster. And it's no surprise to me that, of course, Danny Ainge, the first team he's calling is none other than the Boston Celtics. I mean, that just makes perfect sense. So to me, I feel like, the threat level, if you will, of this trade happening is high. I think that something will go down between these two. I just think that it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, to your point, what exactly does that look like? Can they get that draft capital in return? Is it going to require, a player like Bogdanovich with Jingles, or can they get away with Jingles and a lower tier player? So I think this is the kind of conversation you want to be having if you're a Jazz fan. I think not only does this signal that Danny Ainge understands where the team is at, Danny Ainge also clearly understands the needs of the team, and I think that's a big deal. I think it's one thing to say, hey, we got to tear the roster down, right? It's one thing to say, you gotta completely remake the roster. But what good is remaking the roster if you don't understand the needs of your team, And so when I heard, hey, we're going, the Danny Ainge and the Jazz, we're going after Marcus Smart, that told me, that was a clear signal to me, okay, Danny Ainge clearly understands what this team needs. They need toughness. We talk about that all the time. They definitely need perimeter defense, and Marcus Smart can provide that. And Marcus Smart is a serviceable three-point shooter. He's not the best in the league. He's not the worst in the league.
But
He's
he
just
can knock it
serviceable.
down.
Yeah, I mean, he can make the shot when you need him to. So I think it is a smart player. I like Marcus Smart a lot. I think on the show, you guys have brought up the name Jay Crowder a lot. He's not available, but I think Marcus Smart is that Jay Crowder style player. I mean, that's essentially what Jay Crowder does for Phoenix. He's a guy that'll knock down the three, and he's that dog on defense, man. He gets after you. So I think it would be a great addition. The only question is going to be, what do they have to give up to get it done? And can they, to your point, can they beat out the other teams who are trying to get Marcus Smart?
Well, and I think the draft pick is critical.
Yeah.
I think any trade that the Jazz make now, they've got to try and build a bank of draft capital because they just don't have any.
Yeah.
And as bare as the cupboards are talent-wise, they're even more empty as far as draft capital goes. And I think it's really important that if you are going to remake this team into a contender, the Utah Jazz, you've got to have draft picks to do that.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense that Danny Ainge is shopping for draft picks. I get it. It's just going to be a matter of whose pick does he have to take, because he's not going to get to pick and choose or dictate pretty much any of the controllables in these deals. But I love Marcus Smart coming to the Jazz. He is exactly what this team needs. I mean, speaking of Jay Crowder, you watched that Suns win last night in Dallas. He's all over that, hitting threes, being tough. The kind of foul that a guy like Marcus Smart commits is never a light touch foul.
Yeah.
That's a big, thick dude that's got athletic ability. And I agree with you 100%. He's not going to make 50% of his threes, 40% of his threes, but you don't need him to. This is a team that's got prolific three-point shooting. Even if you move Bojan Bogdanovich, you think about everybody else that's going to remain, because my guess is the Jazz are not going to trade guys like Mike Conley right now.
No.
At least I would not think so. But you look at Donovan Mitchell, his three-point game clearly has been elevated. If you acquire Marcus Smart, I have no problem giving up a Bojan Bogdanovich and a Joe Ingles. That makes a lot more sense to me from a Boston perspective. You give them salary cap relief. You give them a guy in Bogey that can shoot the three and be a contributor to that team, a role player on that team. Because I also think Boston is very clearly trying to move Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. This team is in Boston, from what NBA sources tell me, is going to be built around Jason Tatum. He is very clearly their number one. That's not breaking news by any stretch of the imagination, but they need other pieces. And I think Boston is in a very similar place that the Jazz are, in that they realize the roster's not good enough. Now, there's a lot of questions about, whether they're getting quality coaching in Boston. You have a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of experience leading that bench. We'll see how that plays out. But what you know right now is the next time the Boston Celtics win a championship, it will likely not be with most of the guys that are currently on that roster.
Right.
And you need to make that change.
Right.
I mean, does it make sense to give up a Bojan Bogdanovich and something to get a Marcus Smart?
Yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense. And I think that, one of the benefits of giving up some three-point shooting if you're the Utah Jazz is you get your floor balance back. If you think about how many times we've talked about, the Jazz playing one-on-one basketball or not driving and kicking, or just not playing very winning basketball on the offensive end. I think a lot of that for Donovan has to do with the fact that, he doesn't feel like the guys he has on the floor with him can knock down a lot of these shots, and I think Bogey has proven to be a reliable 3-point shooter, but obviously the regression of Joe Ingles is no secret. You have a guy, Quinn's been playing Jordan Clarkson and Donovan together a bit more lately, before the concussion, obviously, but they have been playing a little bit more together. And I know for a fact, I'm looking at the way Don handles Jordan Clarkson, and he's not giving it to him either. So I think, when I look at Marcus Smart, I think Marcus Smart would bring a lot of balance to the floor as well. I mean, if you think about it, you would have Conley at the 1, Donnie at the 2. You could play Marcus Smart at the 3, and then you have options at the 4 and the 5. Obviously, Rudy would be your 5, but you can mix and match with that a lot more. And Marcus Smart brings that mid-range tough guy mentality to the floor that you don't have right now. So, and I also think too, the other thing with Marcus Smart, the intangible, is playoff experience and leadership. I think that Rudy Gay was supposed to be that for your team, and it doesn't really seem like he's been able to bring that messaging or that experience or that leadership. So hopefully Marcus Smart can bring a little bit of that. He's been in the playoffs. He's played, he's played against LeBron for the Eastern Conference Finals, man. I mean, this is a guy who has done some things in the league. So I think Marcus Smart would be a nice acquisition, and I would have no problem giving up Bogdanovich to do it, because I think you don't need more 3-point shooting. You need more floor balance. You need more experience and leadership, and I think Marcus Smart brings that.
Yeah, and I think you need toughness. One of the big things, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, is that the Jazz are soft. The Jazz are not a tough or physically imposing team. You need toughness on this team.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'll just say again what I've said forever. I think the one guy that I would love to see replaced right now today is Royce O'Neal. I would love to see the Jazz ship out Royce O'Neal, but teams like Boston are not just going to take Royce O'Neal because they don't need him. That guy is readily available around the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic who has a special and unique skill that's not easily attained in the NBA. Bojan Bogdanovic can play inside and outside. He is incredibly limited defensively, but he can rebound for you and he can shoot the 3. And those are 2 skills in this league that are in high demand. And I think that both guys, frankly, could benefit from a change of scenery.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we are seeing the highest, best use for Bojan Bogdanovic right now. I think we're going in the wrong direction with Bogey. My feeling is if he finds a new uniform in a new place that gives him new energy,
he'll explode.
I think he will grow. I think he can get back to 20-point Bogey. I do, because he'll get more opportunity in a different market. I think a guy like Marcus Smart could absolutely, to your point, with his experience and his playoff experience, I think he's a guy that could come in here and really be a leader in this locker room. And I think that toughness is, man, I cannot tell you how many minutes the Utah Jazz waste because they're just not tough. How many losses they give away, or how many wins they give away and turn into losses because they're not mentally tough or physically tough.
Yeah.
I think it's something we don't talk about enough. And obviously when we talk about Rudy Gobert, we talk about the fact that he can be had physically.
Well, and I think it's not just Rudy now either, though. I mean, I think, Rudy, obviously things have happened, but I think Don can be had a little bit from that front. I think we've seen that a bit in the playoffs where guys get real physical with him and really try to impose their will.
Yes.
But I think moreover, too, I think a lot of times when we see this team fall apart in mid-game, we see them start to settle for the bad 3 or not move the ball, or you all know what I'm talking about. When we see that start to happen, I think a Marcus Smart caliber of player, not that he's the best in the game or anything like that, but again, just with his experience and the adversity that he's played through in his career, I really think that he could help them settle down on the floor. This team is overloaded with 3-point shooting. You don't need more 3-point shooting. You need more mid-range. You need more experience. You need more leadership. And so I hope they get this deal done. I really do. Does it make the Jazz a title contender? Well, no. But I definitely think it helps solidify them as a top 5 playoff team, Because right now, they've got a cushion to the 4, 5, 6 teams, right? There's a cushion. But if the team keeps going the way it's going, that cushion is going to get eaten up. And I don't think this team can afford to fall much past 4. I don't think you want to be playing, the top seeds on their 4.
Sure.
So I would love to see this deal happen. But I think the draft pick thing and getting that back from Boston is the most important part of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to me to see if this deal is able to go through or if they're able to find a deal. Because I do know and I do believe from the people I've heard from that Boston would really like to start making deals. It's interesting this year around the NBA. There's a lot of teams that want to make deals and they're just waiting. Like I think there's a lot of teams around the NBA wondering what the Philadelphia 76ers are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that Ben Simmons situation, I think, is holding a lot of general managers up because there's a lot of GMs who want to get in on Ben Simmons. He is a very in-demand player, but I think that, that it's having a trickle-down effect. Like we've talked about Jeremy Grant quite a bit on this show, and I think the Detroit Pistons are really holding out hope that they can get a deal done with the Boston Celtics, and I think that's why they haven't moved Jeremy Grant onto another location at this point.
Yeah.
Because they'd really like to be in on the Ben Simmons deal. And to get Ben Simmons, you're going to have to send a star player.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Grant fills a lot of needs, checks a lot of boxes for the Philadelphia 76ers, but they just won't let go of the Ben Simmons ghost. And frankly, I had a conversation with a guy about this yesterday who straight up said Daryl Morey believes that Ben Simmons will play basketball for the Philadelphia 76ers this year. And I just don't understand that because Ben Simmons has given you no indication he's going to do that. He has given you no indication he's on the verge of reporting.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons doesn't want to be a Sixer, and you need to, at some point, come to grips with that if you're the Sixers and Daryl Morey, because if you lose an entire season, you've just wasted one of the best productive seasons that Joel Embiid's ever going to have in his career.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show. Joel Embiid is having a year of growth and prosperity in Philadelphia without Ben Simmons. He never was this prolific when Ben Simmons was on the floor with him.
All the signs point to trade Ben Simmons, dude. He doesn't want to be on your team. Your best player is getting better without him on the floor. And I think you make a great point. Like, the rest of the league, whether you're a team that wants to be in on Ben Simmons or whether you're a team that's waiting for the Ben Simmons thing to happen so you could be a fringe portion of that deal, is waiting on you to open up the Ben Simmons conversation. So, if you take a second and you look around the league at all the different opportunities that could potentially play out, look no further than, the Dame situation. There's still speculation whether he's going to stay or go or what he's going to do, right? People still think that Damian Lillard could be available. There's these trade rumors and speculation about Don. I'm not saying that Don's going to go anywhere right now, but again, I'm just telling you, if you're an NBA GM and you hear, hey, if Don were to leave, doesn't that perk your ears up a little bit? If you're in the Eastern Conference, and you're, let's say the Bulls as an example, if you're the Bulls, you're the GM of that team, how can we get better at the deadline? What one move can I make to better this team? Because damn, we're pretty darn good when we're fully healthy and not worrying about COVID and Lonzo Ball and his knee, So I just think that this Ben Simmons situation is having a massive impact on the rest of the league. And unfortunately for the rest of the league, the Lakers are looking like they're not going to be particularly active at the deadline. So, because if you think about it, the Lakers are usually a team that's very active at the deadline. So you already have less opportunity than you typically would. And now you've got this whole Ben Simmons saga that's holding everything up. So it'll be curious to see when that bubble bursts. Because I agree with you. I don't think Ben Simmons is reporting anytime soon. I don't think Ben Simmons wants anything to do with this team. I don't think Ben Simmons likes Daryl Morey. I don't think he likes anybody in that front office. And I definitely don't think he likes Joel Embiid. So if you're Daryl Morey, why would you not go ahead and trade him, get your value out of it, and then make a title run? Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, and the interesting part of that whole thing, and the thing that I think is so fascinating about what the 76ers are doing is that it just makes so little sense. To me anyway, it makes so little sense to have Ben Simmons on that roster, and I don't care that you're not paying him. This is another conversation. Well, they're not paying him, so there's no onus to trade him. Well, you're also competing at the top of the Eastern Conference without him, and he's worth a potentially a superstar on your roster. I mean, if you trade him to, we've heard a lot about the Portland Trailblazers. If you trade him and somehow end up with C.J. McCallum out of that deal, does C.J. McCallum make the 76ers better?
Yeah.
He does. Does Nurkic make the Sixers better? He does. I don't think that Dame Lillard has indicated he wants out. I don't think he'd be in that deal. I look at Golden State. Does Kuminga make the 76ers better? Probably not right now. But if it's Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga, all of a sudden, that looks like a hell of a lot better of a deal.
Wiggins can help you.
Like Andrew Wiggins arguably makes you a contender to win the Eastern Conference Championship.
He is a solid all-star now. He
is
respected in the NBA.
He is a weapon.
Yeah.
He is a guy you have to deal with. And if you fit him into that group, you send out Ben Simmons, and now all of a sudden you start to think to yourself, well, if I have Wiggins and I have a guy like Kuminga who can give me 15 minutes off the bench, and you look at the Seth Currys of the world and you look at the way that he fits in with Tobias Harris or whatever that might look like, because who knows what you send in return with Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
But if all or some of those pieces are still there, that makes a lot of sense. And what that does is that frees up the Pistons to go make a deal with somebody else for Jeremy Grant.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's any doubt. And I probably talked to as many people about trades as just about anybody around the NBA, I would think. I have no doubt that Jeremy Grant is one of the best players available for trade right now today.
Yeah.
If you called Detroit and you had a solution for them, they would give you Jeremy Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Simmons is a solution for Detroit. There's no doubt about that. I think there's two things at play there. One, I don't think the Sixers want to send him anywhere in the Eastern Conference. I think the 76ers would like to see him go out west so that they see him once, maybe twice a year. But my feeling is that Jeremy Grant's not the guy they want.
Yeah.
I think the superstar in the Eastern Conference they want is Bradley Beal. But I just don't think that Washington or Bradley Beal are at the moment willing to make a trade, because I think Bradley Beal wants to be an unrestricted free agent.
And why wouldn't you?
But also think about Philadelphia in a Bradley Beal deal. Mm-hmm. If you trade Ben Simmons for Bradley Beal right now,
you're a title contender.
Well, but you're also getting a guy that's going to unrestricted free agency this summer, and you gave up Ben Simmons to get him.
Yeah, but I also think as part of that, there has to be an opportunity for the Sixers to potentially get Beal to agree, without paper, right? But to agree, hey, we can work on an extension after the season. I think it would be naive to assume that those kind of conversations, don't happen. So if I'm the Sixers and you make a great point, I'm not disagreeing with you, because his contract is expiring and because, he obviously has made it clear he wants to go into unrestricted free agency. If you were to make that deal, Bradley Beal, I wouldn't make the deal unless Bradley Beal agreed to work on an extension, to stay with the team, at least 2 to 3 seasons.
But think about teams out west that have been talked about with the 76ers. One of the teams I hear constantly for Ben Simmons is the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
Are the Sacramento Kings willing to give up Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton, and probably Harrison Barnes, and probably some picks for a package to Philadelphia that includes Ben Simmons?
Well, the interesting part about I think they are, first of all, but second of all, this whole De'Aaron Fox situation is kind of interesting. There was a lot of rumors out there that they were willing to trade De'Aaron, and he was in conversations, and then the Kings put out a statement saying that they were not.
I would not trade De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, and I wouldn't either. But it's just kind of interesting. It makes you wonder. Okay, well, you're telling me that somebody just made that up, that they were talking, to teams about De'Aaron?
No, but I think what happens is you get into a situation where you cannot continue to do the same thing you've always done in Sacramento, which is trade your star players or ship out your star players.
Yeah.
I think they realize that De'Aaron Fox is a once-in-a-lifetime talent.
Yeah.
I think they would be open to dealing a Tyrese Halliburton if you're getting a better player in return. And I think there's no doubt that Ben Simmons, while he is very limited as a shooter, he is an attack-the-basket, tenacious defender. And there's a lot of need for that in the Western Conference. I mean, hell, and I've said this about the Utah Jazz. I'd love to have Ben Simmons on the Jazz, But one, he makes a ton of money, and two, I just don't know what you would have to give up to get him. If you're the Sacramento Kings, who cares what you have to give up to get him?
Yeah.
Because he makes you a better team. If you've got to give up Donovan Mitchell to get a Ben Simmons, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that, right? So I'm not giving up a star player, and the only star player on the Utah Jazz that I think Philadelphia would be interested in is Donovan Mitchell, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think that Sacramento's a place that Philadelphia can take a haul from, because I don't think there's a whole lot of back up the Brinks truck teams in the NBA these days.
No.
And especially for a limited player like Ben Simmons. And by the way, not to go back to Rudy Gobert, but when you talk about limited players, Rudy Gobert and Ben Simmons are in the very same situation. They're very limited offensively.
Except I think the league views Ben Simmons as way more valuable.
Because he's a wing.
Yeah.
And he can defend 4 positions. He can defend point through power forward.
Yeah, he's 6'10".
So, but the issue is that he comes with a hell of a lot of baggage.
Yes, he does.
There's going to be a lot of questions about Ben Simmons' willingness to play ball.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see exactly what that looks like. And frankly, I don't know what that looks like right now for Philadelphia. But all of that to say, I think there's a lot of teams sitting on the tipping point waiting for Philadelphia to make a deal.
Yeah, there's going to be a slew of trades that go down at some point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Or how do you fix that? You know, like that.
You don't fix it. I think maybe
that's the case.
There's going to be a sacrificial lamb. Somebody's going to have to go in on Ben Simmons and give the 76ers a ridiculous package to burst the bubble. You know, that's just how, and it's really unfortunate. I'm not a Daryl Morey guy. I think he's mishandled this situation, something terrible. I think the Sixers should be contending for the #1 spot in the East. I think that Ben Simmons should be already on a different team, and the Sixers should already be building chemistry and getting everyone on the same page with whoever they had gotten back in the Ben Simmons deal. But they're not doing that. And I think Daryl Morey is crazy if he thinks that any contender out West is going to give him their best player for Ben Simmons. That's not happening. It's just not. So we've seen this time and time again in sports, you know, whether it's Bryce Harper with the Nationals all those years ago. You know, I mean, there's so many examples of this, you know, the star player that the team didn't want to move, who's now leaving. You know, I mean, hell, over the summer we had the Aaron Rodgers saga, right? Where Aaron Rodgers wanted to be traded and didn't want to play, and then they got it all figured out, and now they're back in the divisional round. Like, we've seen this time and time again, man. And I just think that Daryl Morey is an idiot if he thinks Ben Simmons is going to play basketball again. Ben Simmons has already said he's happy to sit out the whole year. So why is it that Daryl Morey is trying to sell himself a story about Ben Simmons playing again? I just think it's bad business. I think it's not the way to have success in the NBA. And by the way, you play in the weaker conference. That needs to be said. You play in the Eastern Conference. Opportunity to get to the NBA Finals through the East is much greater than the opportunity in the West. I think we can all agree with that. So
yeah, I would agree.
I just think overall, you know, to put a bow around this conversation, I love what the Jazz are doing in terms of trying to get Marcus Smart. I think that would be a very pragmatic trade. I think they don't have to give up a ton to go and get Marcus Smart, and I think they could get draft capital back. So if that happens, if they check all those boxes, I'm a full supporter of that trade. And I think the Ben Simmons deal, if you follow the NBA closely, you know, once that deal happens, there's going to be a waterfall effect, and a ton of deals are going to go down. So
yeah,
will the Jazz get in on any of that is the question.
And my strong feeling is I don't think they will. I still maintain the Jazz don't make a transformative deal until the summer. You know, like I just don't see, you know, like I see a lot of people talking about the Jazz and the Sixers making a Ben Simmons deal. I just don't see how that works, right? I mean, I don't know, man. If I am the Jazz, it's really, I understand why it's difficult to be patient. I really do. Let's get some of your comments in here because I see a lot of people commenting. Cody Strickland says, "Good morning, men. It's really sad to hear about the Jazz yesterday." What about the Jazz yesterday? Frank H. says, "I think the loss of Niang has hurt the team big time." I mean, as a guy, maybe. But, I mean, you've replaced his production. Certainly, I think Rudy Gay can certainly match anything that George Niang's done. So I don't know. I mean, chemistry is such a fickle friend, like that's the whole thing with Joe Ingles. I mean, do you really want to trade a guy that's been a glue guy for you?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be emotional about it.
Yeah.
You have to make pragmatic business decisions.
It just
Yeah, I agree. James Knight says, I'm not sure it's a given that Joe Ingles will continue his career at another franchise. He has a young family and wouldn't surprise me if he retired. He's getting a paycheck. I mean, after this season, I could see him retiring. But I would be surprised if he just up and quit during the season.
Yeah.
Eric DeVere says, trade Jingles and Royce. Also pick up Taco Fall as a cheap backup center. I mean, you have a backup center, don't you? I mean,
come on, man.
Yeah, come on, man. Cody Strickland says, I heard they're suffering a case of being little whining bitches syndrome. That could definitely be true. Is it true that we were on the phone for Ben Simmons asking for a friend? I have not heard one time that the Jazz are trying to get Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
Because I again will just say, you have nothing that Philadelphia wants other than Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, the Ben Simmons and Jazz thing to me is a convenient narrative. A lot of people want to say, "Oh, well, Ben Simmons, the Jazz could offer a ton to the Sixers," and I actually don't think that's true when you really get into it. And I'm not trying to get into some long, drawn-out discussion about what they could offer him, but I just think that it's not the right move. It's not the right time for the Jazz to go and get another player who's getting paid a ridiculous amount of money every single year. And by the way, Ben Simmons arguably, would be the best player on the team, him versus Don and that whole dynamic. So I just don't think it's the right time, and I don't think he's the right player for this team. I don't. I think that the Jazz need to go out and get the Marcus Smart level of player to add to the roster and to bring balance to the floor, and they can do that. So that's what I think they should be doing.
I think when you look at, I still will sit here and say what I've said all year and since last summer. They're going to trade Ben Simmons, right? I mean,
well, you're not just going to let him sit there and do nothing, I would think.
But I have to think by the deadline you're going to trade Ben Simmons.
I would think, but I don't know, dude. I don't know, man.
I just would be stunned if he sat there. I hope the Jazz are not where he ends up. Because you're not going to trade Rudy Gobert to get Ben Simmons, and I just don't know how offensively you have those two guys on the floor at the same time.
Yeah,
I really don't. I mean, I think that makes
it's just not a good fit. I mean, on so many levels.
I don't love it. I really don't. The blind swordsman Diaz says, it true that we were on the phone for Ben Simmons asking for a friend? Eric DeVere says Jazz could be on the deal with Ben Simmons, but not to keep Ben, more like a third or fourth team. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if a Sacramento Ben Simmons trade goes through, you're going to need a third team in all likelihood.
Well, and I think the Jazz are understand that. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy in Danny Ainge who's been around the block. I mean, he understands where this team is at. He understands the dynamic in the league. And I think that's why I say when the Ben Simmons deal goes down, I don't think the Jazz will be involved. But I do think the Jazz are going to try and get involved in all the deals that happen after the Ben Simmons deal as a third team or whatever. I just can't for the life of me believe that Danny Ainge wouldn't be trying to get involved in that. That just makes too much sense.
Look at that. Demarcus Cousins was rumored yesterday to sign a 1-year deal with the Lakers. Oh, not so much. Adrian Wojnarowski says Demarcus Cousins will sign a 10-day contract with the Nuggets.
Come on, man.
Denver has 6 games in the next 10 days, and they need a body there for sure.
You have a deal.
By the way, Russell Westbrook also said he was disappointed in the benching, but said he understood it. What's best for our team is to win in the long run.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
That sounds like a dude who understands he's going to be traded.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like. So, and the Lakers are another team that a lot of people are interested in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, Kay Nurin, good morning, too. She says the Jazz need to move on from Donnie's. Doesn't pass the ball anymore. I can't imagine Donovan Mitchell not being a Jazz.
We're not humoring that. Sorry.
With
all due respect.
Yeah,
we're not trading Donovan Mitchell.
I would not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Do we think we trade Rudy Gobert? Isn't his contract crazy to move? I don't see any way you trade Rudy right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the money you would have to send I just don't see.
It's outlandish. I mean,
Yeah.
the money that he's being paid is ridiculous.
Cody says, yeah, we only have Bogey, Joe, and Clarkson as tradable pieces. And the other teams want maybe Royce for a pick, but that's it. Yeah, I don't see any way that. That's why I said I think you have a lot more opportunity and a lot more wherewithal from other teams to make deals over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. And usually that's when you're able to kind of, remake your roster. The hard part is when you pay the luxury tax, you have to match dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
And the Jazz right now have a real problem salary-wise.
Yeah.
Their cap is not in a good place.
Well, and the other thing I think we have to say before we leave the conversation is that when you, as a Jazz fan, watch this team and how they operate at the trade deadline, how they operate at this trade deadline will tell you exactly what they're going to do in the summer. If they don't make a ton of moves, let's just say, for example's sake, you go out, you get Marcus Smart, you get that pick, you move on from Bogey and let's say Joe, and that's all you do. Okay, that's telling you that they're going to wait for the summer to really, I don't know, I don't want to say tear this team down, but to really make the big impactful moves. But let's say that they do the Smart deal, they move on from Bogey and Joe, but let's say they also do another small deal. Let's say they trade Royce. Let's say that they, do these little let's say they traded Jordan Clarkson for a couple of picks and some money or something like that. I mean, that you have to watch this team and how Danny Ainge operates because that's going to tell you what they're going to do in the summer. But I think the more I think about the Lakers, the more I think the what they were running out there earlier this week about not trading Russ might just be a bunch of garbage. That they might just be duping the league a little bit and trying to fly under the radar for a little while. And then all of a sudden, Rob Pelinka's been on the phone for the last month putting deals together, and all of a sudden they drop 3-4 deals before the deadline's up. And now all of a sudden their team is locked and loaded. I could totally see that.
I could totally see that as well. I think the difference is that the LA Lakers have a bunch of guys that fit roles on other teams. And I still maintain the Houston Rockets are the most likely trade partner for the LA Lakers. John Wall and Eric Gordon are two pieces that the Rockets very much want to move. And they know that they're going to have to probably take a punch in the face to move John Wall's deal. And John Wall is a guy, and this is something that a lot of people also forget. He's not playing basketball right now. He is healthy. He's 100%. He is begging to play. He essentially is a mentor and a practice player for the Houston Rockets until they find a place to trade him.
I would love John Wall on this team.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the more interesting questions is, where does John Wall end up? And what happens when the Houston Rockets wind up moving John Wall? Because there's a lot of places that John Wall would be a pretty good fit. And Eric Gordon can still shoot the three.
Oh, yeah, he can.
And when you look at what the Lakers need, they need John Wall. They need Eric Gordon.
John Wall instead of Russell Westbrook would be life-changing.
I think it would. I mean, can you imagine the Lakers with a healthy John Wall, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis?
The problem, dude, I've lost my like for Anthony Davis. I got to tell you, man. The injury, and I know it's not his fault. I'm not saying that he's intentionally getting hurt, obviously, but the fact is your best ability is your availability.
Yes, it
is. The guy is never healthy. And yes, he hit that huge shot in the bubble to win them a championship, but what's he done? What have you done for me lately?
Well, and I also think
the street closed Davis.
Yeah, the Lakers are coming to a point where they're understanding that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're still getting an incredible performance out of LeBron James, but you're losing games.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is
not enough.
Because of Anthony Davis. But remember, before he got hurt, he was awkward. He wasn't shooting threes. They were really wanting him to play the 4. They've now figured out that LeBron James playing the 5 is a real solution. That is a real small ball lineup that's realistic for the LA Lakers, and they've found ways to be productive in those sets.
Yep.
They just need more.
Yep.
And Anthony Davis, should be reevaluated at the end of this week. We'll see if we get an update on that. But you should be also looking at the Lakers making substantial deals.
Yeah.
And I think if you're willing to send Talon Horton-Tucker to the Rockets to get John Wall and Eric Gordon, that's a deal you're going to make.
Yeah.
And they're going to take Russell Westbrook in return and probably buy him out.
Jesus,
I
dude.
mean,
that would just be I don't mean to wax poetic about what that team could be, but that could be a real problem.
Well, and that's why I say I think that there's a lot of people who overlook these guys that are just sitting on the sideline.
It's kind of wild how that's played out in the NBA, man. There's been a lot of guys like the Lance Stevenson thing, absolute revelation. I mean, one of the best stories in the NBA. Like, I know Lance Stevenson is kind of an odd personality, but that's a great story, man. That is a great story.
I think it's very interesting to see where all these deals happen. Kelsey Hamer says, dude, so the Jazz are basically deadlocked right now. They're just in a really difficult spot.
I mean, you could say that. I don't think that that's an exaggeration or a stretch. I think that the issue is that your money situation, like the money situation wouldn't be nearly as bad as it is if you had draft capital to work with.
Yes.
Right? But because you don't have basically any draft capital until 2028 right now, you can't trade draft picks as value to fix this roster. So what you end up having to do is trade, Joe and Bogey to go get Marcus Smart and hope that the Celtics are willing to give you that second round pick. You're having to make deals like that. And the problem is other teams know that and can see that and understand it. So you're not the team that has the leverage. You're at the behest of what other teams want.
Correct.
And that's the issue.
Yeah, and I just think that you have to be very careful. Any deal you make that where you take money back is a deal that is going to make your life more difficult, not better.
Yeah.
So, Coach Josh Lovering, good morning to you. Excuse me. I'm dying. Lovering says, could the Jazz put a package together for Kevin Porter Jr.? Why would they move Kevin Porter Jr.?
Yeah, I don't think they would, dude.
Because Kevin Porter Jr. has finally found his brain and his game together, and that's a young core that is a handful.
Yeah,
that is a handful. Much like your butthole right now, because you continue to methane this room.
No, I do not, dude.
Again,
what are you talking about, bro?
You are a gas
dude.
man.
What are you talking about?
Stop disrespecting me, bro.
Yeah, come on,
terrible.
dude. Like, what are you doing, bro?
It's terrible.
Come on.
Right
I
now.
did not fart again.
You did.
No, I didn't.
The Blind Swordsman DS says, no, Gobert is not the most impactful player the Jazz could get another big right now, and he could be as good as Rudy.
Shout out to Mo Bamba.
Rudy Gobert is an elite defensive player. Mo Bamba ain't even in the conversation, yo. Rudy Gobert is an incredibly impactful player. He is an elite defender. I think it'd be very difficult to replace his impact defensively. You would essentially have to – the Utah Jazz, as I say every day, are built around the wrong guy. They're built around Rudy Gobert right now, and that's why you're not winning. That's why you're capped, because you cannot just feed into Rudy Gobert and think that that's a long-term defensive solution.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Kelsey Hamer says you could funnel the whole defense to Giannis, and he would be as effective as Rudy. I disagree.
Oh, he'd be twice as effective as Rudy overall. I think Giannis is. I agree with the logic there. I think Giannis is way more athletic than Rudy is. Rudy has length on Gobert or on Giannis. I mean. But I think Giannis is more effective because he's a better athlete, and I think that's what gives him the edge.
I think Rudy Gobert is a better defender than Giannis, and I think Giannis has become an elite offensive player now because he can shoot. And I just don't see Rudy ever getting there.
I'm not trying to hate on Rudy, but I don't know that I agree that he's a better defender than Giannis. I think Giannis can cover more ground. Giannis can guard the perimeter and the paint. Giannis is intimidating.
I don't think Giannis is a guy that is asked to do what Rudy's asked to do.
That's fair.
I think there's a big part of that.
But we get, you know what we get though? We get the Giannis huge block to define the game in the postseason against the Suns type play. And I think that's what solidifies him as an MVP every year, I feel like.
I don't disagree with that. I really don't. I think it is. I think there's a lot at work here for the Jazz. I think you have the wrong players for the wrong system. You have the wrong coach and the wrong system for the players that you have. And I think you made massive mistakes salary-wise. I think you hitched your wagon to Rudy Gobert and you thought that everything would be better, and it's not. And I think that you need to remake this team around Donovan Mitchell. And I think Donovan Mitchell needs to grow up. He needs to become He needs to become the star player that he believes he is, and he needs to live that truth every single day.
Yeah.
And I think he needs to demonstrate that by his play on the floor. I mean, I look at the Devin Booker block last night, and those two, I think, will probably forever be compared to each other. I look at the Devin Booker block last night. If you've ever wondered if Devin Booker's a willing, good defender, that was on full display
Hell of
last
a play,
night.
dude. Hell of a
And
play.
Devin Booker won them the game in Dallas in a close game, where the Phoenix Suns had to fight tooth and nail to get by Dallas. Devin Booker with a critical 3 late, a critical block late, and critical free throws late.
Wet like I'm booked.
I mean, the turnaround bank shot he hit was incredible. I mean, that's what you're missing with Donovan Mitchell. You are missing that defense, and you are missing that leadership by example.
Yeah.
On the floor.
Yeah.
So I think Devin has has grown a lot. I think that Donovan Mitchell has to grow now, and you need to build this team around him.
Yeah.
And I just don't know you'll ever be able to do that. I'll just maintain you won't win a championship with Rudy Gobert as your focal point.
Yeah.
You just won't.
All right. We got to talk football because we're already running out of time, dude.
Yeah. James Knight says Jake may need the ass vacuum this morning.
I don't know. Yeah, no. I'm dude. It's an outlandish accusation to say that I farted a second time because I
Here we
didn't.
go.
I definitely crop dusted the set when I rolled up. No doubt. Definitely did.
You're such a jerk.
But, I mean, that was your fault because you squeezed me. I was trying to get by and,
I squeezed you.
Yeah.
Think that's HIPAA?
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
Quinn Snyder has had embarrassing losses in the playoffs year after year, and any other coach on any other team would not still have his job. I totally disagree with that. I think that Quinn Snyder's made mistakes, and is it time for a new coach? Yes, it is. Would any other general manager have fired Quinn Snyder? No, they wouldn't have. He's done a very, very good job here.
Yeah.
He has done a very good job here. So, we'll see. All right, let's switch gears and talk NFL. By the way, you want to stick around because do we just throw that thing on the table now, or when do we do this?
You want me to take it out?
Do you always have to make everything about your penis?
What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about.
You are phallically obsessed.
Come on, man.
I mean,
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
okay, do you want to do this now?
Sure. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
we
whip
can do
it
it
out.
now. All right.
Put it on the table. You need to pick up these fine these shoes. This is one of the greatest shoes ever.
Man, yeah.
But we're gonna have to replace it.
Wow.
Hey, look at what do we have here?
Oh man.
What do we have here? That would be an Xbox Series X.
Well.
4K gaming, 8K high dynamic range, a terabyte of storage. I mean, are
Just saying.
Are you kidding me with this thing? Let's pull this back a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
Like right there so everybody can see it.
Do you see us working? Do you see us working now?
I see us working.
I mean, come on, dude.
4K Blu-ray player, variable refresh rates, a terabyte of solid state storage.
Bro, this is the best of the best for Microsoft right here. You guys get that? Like this is we pulled some strings to get this.
Uh-oh.
What?
Uh-oh.
What?
Eric DeVera said, I just received a text and it says Jake farted again.
Well,
Anyway, the point is
Stop disrespecting me, bro.
we're giving away this Xbox Series X. A, you have to be a subscriber. B, by the way, look that's a T-shirt that Jake's holding up. If you buy a T-shirt from us, you'll get 4 entries for every T-shirt that you purchased. So all you need to do is subscribe to the channel. Are we going to do like we've talked about this in vagary.
yeah.
Subscribe to the channel. You need to tweet at us or Instagram at us. Tag us that you subscribed, and you're entered to win the Xbox.
Yep. And
Now-
if you buy a shirt,
You get 4 entries to win the Xbox.
and every shirt you buy, it's 4 more entries.
That's what I'm saying.
What else is there to say, dude?
Kelsey Hamer says Monty for the win.
Yeah, dude. Xbox Series X. And by the way, we got more heat coming too.
Yeah.
Just saying.
James Knight says, my guess is we'll see Growcock enter the comments again.
Yeah, hey, I'm just saying, you guys should look up to Growcock as a role model on this show. For those of you who don't know, Growcock was an individual who was on the show quite a while ago. He lives in Australia. And we did a giveaway for an Xbox Series S, as in Sam. He came into the comments section and made a proposal. He said, if I can get 10 people to agree that I should win this Xbox, you guys got to give it to me on the show today. And what did he get?
He got like 30 people to
He got
agree
like
to give
30
it to him.
people who supported him, and we gave it away. So Growcock kind of was a trendsetter. So just saying, like, you guys should look up to him, But now we got something better. Series X, what else do you want from us, We got on the phone. We made the deal. We're now a championship contender. What else is there to say?
I don't know. Like what I would say is...
What I would say is buy shirts. Literally just buy shirts. Because if you were to spend, what, $50, 2 shirts, 8 entries?
We only have 6 of these shirts left, by the way.
Yeah,
so
we have to get more.
There's only 6 shirts to get you. That's 24 entries.
Just saying.
So once we sell out of shirts, we're gonna make new ones, and then we'll do it all over again. But when do we want to give this Xbox away? I say we do it at 3,000.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it at 3,000. What are we at, 2,700 right now?
2,700 something.
Get your friends involved, man. Get them on the show. Let's go.
27, 18. Yeah, and seen a bunch of people subscribed. You're getting
Well,
you're
well,
picking this
well.
up.